Hi there, Eli here with my brother and co-host Joshua from This Is Something, and today we bring you a film review.
So turn on the lights, grab your popcorn, this is movies.
So, should probably get this review started. I reckon.
That's right, guys. We're doing the good, the bad,
And the ugly.
and man, this is a good film.
It's a really good film. It's one of my favorites, actually.
It's up there. It's up there for me. It's good. Now, it is a commitment. What did it clock in at?
Comes in at 3 hours and 6 minutes long.
Yeah, so, you know...
And only 15 scenes. I'm kidding. It's more than 15, but it doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it, and that's mostly because the scenes are long and drawn out. And I mean that in the best way possible. Usually when you say, like, a scene is long and drawn out, you're thinking, you know, like, oh, this is going to be really boring.
Mm-hmm.
But they are long scenes, and there are whole scenes. There could, you know, you can go 5 or 10 minutes at a time without any dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the first line of dialogue isn't even uttered until 10.5 minutes in the movie.
Yep.
It's at 10.5 minutes where the first line of dialogue is spoken.
And it's spoken by a guy who dies 3 seconds later.
So, spoiler
or 3
alert.
hours later. It feels like
it feels. But it is a great movie. Now,
and it's a Clint Eastwood.
It's a Clint Eastwood classic. It's a classic Western.
Young Clint Eastwood.
And it's the last of the Dollars trilogy, which was all Clint Eastwood films, The Man with No Name.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, all 3 of those films had their American release in the same year. They all had their American release in '67, with A Fistful of Dollars in January, for a few dollars more in March, and then in December was The Good and Bad Ugly of '67. So December '67 was
and I've not seen the other two, actually, so...
Which is interesting, because you don't really see trilogies coming out in one year.
Well, yeah, Star Wars took
yeah.
several years. The originals, then the prequels. Now you see the new one. You know, the new ones are coming out once every 2 years. So with extras in the middle, of course, but that's a different story. But yes, great movie. Great movie. It's, of course, one of the most famous spaghetti westerns ever made.
Now, spaghetti western, referring to westerns made in Italy, made by Italian crews, mostly cast Italian.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's mostly almost the entire cast is Italian except for the main characters.
Well, with the exception of the three primary leads being Lee Van Cleef, Eli Wallach, and Clint Eastwood. Everybody else spoke Italian and then was dubbed.
Yeah.
And now the dubbing isn't terrible. There are a few scenes that are a little bit... The times I notice the dubbing is when a voice doesn't seem to match the person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking specifically the scene where they're on a Confederate base and he's putting corn cobs, making like corn cob soup.
Mm-hmm.
His voice doesn't match what I expected the voice to sound like.
Yeah.
That's where I noticed the dubbing. I also the Union Colonel or Union Captain at the bridge scene.
Mm-hmm.
Also, his voice doesn't seem to match what I expect him to sound like. It's less this, the sinking the lips.
Sinking the lips.
But the dubbing isn't terrible. So, what is your favorite scenes in that movie?
I mean, we kind of tried to reenact one a little bit ago. You know, the staring scene is just, it's so iconic to me. Obviously, I really like the end to the.
I was gonna say
the Mexican standoff. That's one thing, but actually after that, the very end, when he's like Blondie. When you go back,
that gets intense because you for a little bit like, oh boy, I want to.
You're not the good.
Yeah. The climax though is hands down my favorite scene.
Mm-hmm.
The truel or the Mexican standoff that happens at the end.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the duel of the fates of Western films.
Mm-hmm.
The score on it, the crescendoing score, and then it cuts out. It gets loud and it cuts out,
and then it comes back really loud, and then it cuts out again.
It's intense. You believe somebody? Huh?
Said it's intense. It's actually in the graveyard.
It's an intense scene. Man, that probably is one of my top 10 favorite movie scenes of all time. It is so well shot.
And there was something you were telling me about the other day that I read up on earlier on IMDb about that scene. Was that the actual location was that the people that built the cemetery, Sand Hill Cemetery, was actually the pyrotechnics crew that blew up the bridge. And they blew up that's really interesting to me.
That cemetery is still there, yeah.
And they said it's some sort of landmark now that you can visit as a local point of interest. And they said there's certain parts are gone, but the actual cemetery itself is still there.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool actually too. I'd like to visit that someday.
That is cool, and but yeah, I mean that climax is amazing. And honestly, truthfully, if you sit for 3 hours of this movie, and you're like, man, I didn't really care for this film. I feel like you are rewarded for all your time.
Just for sitting through
for that 10 or 15 minutes that's at the end. It's just so well done. Actually, the whole movie is shot beautifully. The cinematography in this is some of my favorite cinematography.
Yeah, definitely.
Sergio Leone knows how to work a camera. He knows how to make a camera work for the environment and how to make the camera work for a scene. He is really good at constructing good shots. And there are just a number of I can't even count how many really nice shots. The whole shot that's in the middle in the Confederate camp where they're playing music, or in the POW camp, and one of the Confederate soldiers playing fiddle. That is a gut-wrenching scene. That is again just so wonderful. Two wonderful
characters getting beat up.
Yeah, it's such a wonderfully filmed shot.
A question I do have for you, and it's something that we watched a couple days ago for the first time after a while. It was every time I watch it, and I've watched a lot more than you have actually, but every time I watch it, I realize more and more like one-liners and great lines from that movie. What's your favorite quote from that movie?
Ooh, I don't know if I have a favorite quote per se. I will say, I don't know if I have a favorite quote, but I will say, this is my third or fourth time seeing it through. And I'll say that I realize...
That's 12 hours of your life
I know.
You can't get back.
I noticed that for the first time, I think I just catch something new every time, and I noticed in this go-around that there were a lot of funny lines that I never really caught before. I was like, that's actually legitimately pretty funny. The whole scene where Tuco shoots a guy, catches Tuco, and then Tuco shoots him, and Tuco says, you know, if you're going to shoot, don't talk.
Oh, when he's in the bathroom.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty funny. There's actually a couple scenes. There's 3 or 4 lines of dialogue that were spoken. I was like, that's actually pretty damn funny.
There's a line that every single time I watch it, I'm like, oh, I forgot that line was in there. I really like that line. And then I'll forget it, and the next time I watch it in a couple of years,
you're like, oh, yeah.
It's one of the last lines of the movie, and it's after the Cleve Van Leaf's...
Lee Van Cleef.
Lee Van Cleef. I can't speak. Cleve Van Leaf. Lee Van Cleef. After his character, the bad Angel Eyes, is killed.
Spoiler alert.
Well, this whole thing's a spoiler alert, anyways. Blondie, who is Clint Eastwood's character, walks up to Tuco, and Tuco's got his gun. It's empty. He had emptied the night before, whatever. And he throws him a shovel. And he says, there's 2 kinds of people in this world, Tuco. There's those of us with guns, and there's those who dig. I love that so much because he's so like.
No, what's interesting is we've said we've kicked the name around Tuco a lot, and what's interesting is Clint Eastwood didn't really care for this film. Clint Eastwood didn't like this movie, and he actually almost didn't do the film. He until they offered him like $250,000 more, and they offered him a Ferrari.
Yeah.
But he said he felt like he was overshadowed by the character of Tuco, and at the end of the day, he's right. You watch that film, and this is much more Tuco's story than it is The Man with No Names, which is different from Fistful of Dollars and a few dollars more. Those are about The Man with No Name. They're the Man with No Name story. The third story in the trilogy, though, is really more Tuco's story than the Man with No Name story. So much more. Which is neither here nor there. You know, these are all anti-heroes. They're all, bad people. Now, what's interesting is Eli Wallach plays Tuco, and he actually almost died a couple times on set.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
He drank acid on set at one point.
And not like LSD acid. Acid.
Yeah, acid. They had set it aside in a soda bottle. They were using it for something to do with the props, and they had put it in a soda bottle, and he drank out of it. He was also almost decapitated in the train scene.
Well, they said if he had lifted his head just a few inches.
But the thing was that they didn't know that, and he didn't know that until they went back and looked at the film.
Like, holy crap.
Yeah, like, if you had moved your head up a few inches during that scene, you would have been decapitated.
There was also the scene right around the same time that they filmed when he drank the acid. He also when the horse goes running, when the first time they shoot, that Clint Eastwood's character shoots the rope, and he goes running off with the horse, and he's got his hands tied behind his back and everything.
He's tied up on that horse, and that horse ran. The horse went out of control and ran with him on horseback for a whole mile.
Yeah, and they said that he was just clenching his legs together for his life around the horse.
Yeah.
So because the horse went crazy when he heard the gunshot.
So now that was in '67. Obviously, there weren't a lot of OSHA standards. So
there was something else that. Last time we did a movie, we did talk about the budgeting for it. We talked about the producers and all that. This film was incredibly expensive for the time, and I don't know quite why that would be. I mean, a lot of these spaghetti westerns were, shot.
There are a lot,
but it might have to do a lot with Clint Eastwood.
Probably had a lot to do with Clint Eastwood. Like I said, he kind of I don't want to say threw a temper tantrum, but he wouldn't do the film. In the middle of filming, decided he wasn't going to do it. And like I said, they had to offer him $250,000 more to his contract, and they gave him a Ferrari.
Yeah, but they said I think it was $1.6 million filmed in.
There's a lot of big
whatever.
crane. There's a lot of crane shots in this film. There are some helicopters. I think some helicopter shots. So that can get expensive
too. They had to blow up a bridge.
Yeah, well, and they had to do that twice. So I mean, I think it's just, and plus when you're clocking in at 3 hours of film.
Yeah. And
now here's a standard rule of thumb: if a movie, what you see in a movie, is only 10% of what's actually filmed, 10 to 15% of what's actually filmed, right? So there's probably about 300 hours of film on this movie that they cut down to 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I imagine, you know, when you clock in and film that, you're going to start making budget just because of how much time you're spending on making this film.
Yeah.
So
I mean, again, I don't want to trash on Clint Eastwood though, because not only did he play really well in this movie, but he is, even though he I don't know how he is as a person, but especially from some of the stuff I've heard like that, he still is one of my favorite actors. I mean, Gran Torino happens to be one of my favorite movies,
yeah,
too.
Gran Torino's a great
and he's also
film.
a great director, too. I mean, he's, so... So, I think we're about done here.
Yeah, so what would you, before we head out, a couple things. One, what would you score this film out of 10?
Out of 10, I would give it at least a solid 9.
I was going to say, I would probably give this film an 8.
An 8?
I'd probably do an 8.
I think IMDb
this is not
has it as an 8.9.
Okay, so that's about right. I think this isn't a technically perfect film, and I do think there's fat that can be cut out of it.
Well, there's definitely a lot of fat, but would it retract from the movie? That's
I don't, and that's a good question. I don't know. So, guys, comment below. Have you seen this film? Do you like this movie? Do you like Clint Eastwood as an actor? What movie should we do next month for This Is Movies?
Let us know.
Let us know. And until next time,
I'm Eli.
I'm Joshua.
And this is Movies.
We hope you liked today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment because we enjoy chatting with you.
Also, check us out on Instagram and Facebook at This Is Something. All the links are below. Thanks and have a beautiful day.